On the sunlit Mediterranean island of Malta, where history clings to the limestone walls of Valletta and politics mingles with whispers in narrow streets, a woman named Daphne Caruana Galizia built a reputation that would make her the most feared and admired journalist in her country. A woman whose pen cut sharper than knives, whose words dared to expose corruption, cronyism, and crime in places where silence was expected, and whose courage came at a price. For though she was a mother, a wife, and a neighbor in the quiet village of Bidnia, she became, above all else, a voice that refused to be silenced. Her blog running commentary, followed by thousands, her investigations into the powerful shaping public opinion, her revelations about the Panama Papers tying Maltese elites to secret offshore accounts, and her reporting daring to link political figures, business tycoons, and shadowy networks in stories that rattled the establishment. And yet each word she typed, each post she published, carried risk, because Malta, though small and picturesque, was a place where power was closely guarded, where exposing secrets meant challenging people with wealth and influence who were unaccustomed to being challenged. And Daphne knew this. She felt the threats. She saw the intimidation. Her home set on fire once, her dogs killed in warning, her family harassed. And still she continued. Because truth for her was not optional, it was an obligation. And that obligation became the path that led to her death. For on October 16, 2017, she climbed into her Peugeot 108 outside her home, unaware that beneath the driver's seat a car bomb had been planted, a device wired and waiting, and only moments after she pulled out onto the narrow road near her house, the explosion tore through the calm of the Maltese countryside, shattering glass, igniting fire, hurling debris across fields, and reducing the car to twisted metal, while villagers rushed out in horror, and her son Matthew, hearing the blast, ran toward the smoke only to find the burning wreck, the body of his mother beyond recognition, her voice silenced not by argument or debate, but by the ruthless violence of assassination. And in that instant, Malta was thrown into shock. For though she had many enemies, the brazenness of the murder was staggering, a message delivered in flames that the truth was too dangerous to live. The killing of Daphne Caruana Galizia reverberated far beyond Malta, drawing condemnation from the European Union, human rights organizations, and journalists across the world. Because this was not only the silencing of a critic, but the attempted silencing of journalism itself. A chilling reminder that speaking truth to power can demand the ultimate price. And as police arrived, as investigators combed the wreckage for evidence, as forensic teams searched for the smallest clue, the question on everyone's lips was not just who had planted the bomb, but who had ordered it. For assassinations of this kind are rarely random. They are orchestrated, financed, decided by people who have much to lose. And Daphne's body of work was filled with names who fit that description. Her reporting having dug into government corruption, shady energy deals, ties between Malta and organized crime, even allegations touching the Prime Minister's closest circle. And suddenly the island, so often painted as a tourist paradise, was cast in the shadows of mafia-style violence. And the government, pressured from within and without, vowed justice, arrests, answers. But for Daphne's family, the words were empty echoes, for they had watched her fight alone for years. They had seen her hounded, demonized, and isolated, and now they saw her killed in broad daylight, an assassination that felt not only possible, but inevitable in hindsight. And yet the inevitability did not lessen the outrage, because here was a woman who had risked everything to tell the truth. And here was a country forced to reckon with whether that truth had died with her. The investigation began with promises of speed and justice, but like much in Malta, it soon became entangled in politics, suspicion, and delay. And though three men, George DeGiorgio, Alfred DeGiorgio, and Vincent Muscat, were eventually arrested as the hitmen who planted and detonated the bomb, the deeper question of who had hired them lingered in the air like smoke, because killers of this kind are tools, not authors. And the search for the mastermind became the true battle, dragging the nation through years of scandal and revelation, with each twist of the case unveiling new rot beneath Malta's surface, as journalists, civil society, and Daphne's own sons refused to let her memory fade. demanding answers not only about the men who pressed the trigger, but about the businessmen and politicians who may have paid for it. And the louder they demanded, the clearer it became that Daphne's assassination was not only a crime, but a mirror, reflecting back at Malta the corruption she had spent her life exposing. Her murder ignited protests in the streets, candles lit in Valletta, posters bearing her face, chants demanding accountability, and gradually the pressure grew so fierce that even Prime Minister Joseph Muscat was forced to announce his resignation in 2019 after his government became tainted by links to those implicated in the assassination, a political earthquake that would have been unthinkable before Daphne's death. And yet in this irony lay her final act of journalism. For though they killed her body, her words, her investigations, her warnings continued to unravel the powerful, toppling careers, exposing networks, and proving that though they had silenced her voice, they had not silenced her truth. Still, the story is not over, for trials continue, revelations still emerge, and questions remain. Questions about how deep the rot runs, about how many others were complicit in silencing a woman whose only weapon was a keyboard. And in those questions lives the legacy of Daphne Caruana Galizia, a woman who once wrote that, "There are crooks everywhere you look now. The situation is desperate." Words she typed only hours before her death. Words that ring today not as despair, but as prophecy. Because her assassination was not merely an act of violence against her, but a crime against truth, against democracy, against the right of citizens to know. And her story is now told in classrooms, in documentaries, in vigils. Her face remembered not in fear, but in defiance, because though the bomb was meant to erase her, it immortalized her instead, turning her from one journalist in Malta into a symbol across the world. Proof that truth-tellers may be killed, but not defeated. Proof that stories once spoken cannot be buried with the bodies of their authors. And so the narrative of Daphne Caruana Galizia stretches beyond her life and death, becoming part of a larger history of journalists who dared and paid the price, her story echoing alongside those of Anna Politkovskaya in Russia, Jamal Khashoggi in Turkey, and countless others silenced for refusing to bow, but also standing as a rallying cry, a reminder that journalism matters, that truth matters, that the struggle for transparency and justice is never easy, but always essential, and that while the world may try to forget, memory, like Daphne's words, has a way of resurfacing, sharper and stronger than before. And in Malta, in Europe, and across the globe, her name continues to be spoken, her image carried in marches, her words quoted in speeches, because Daphne's story is not just about how she died, but about how she lived, about the courage of one woman against a wall of silence, and about how even in death she continues to speak, not with a keyboard now, but through the voices of thousands who took up her cause, ensuring that the fire lit by her assassination would not consume her legacy, but would illuminate the path toward justice. Subscribe to Dark Thread Chronicles, where every shadowed mystery, chilling crime, and untold story is brought to light with the depth and darkness they deserve.